Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video, which is going to be a sew-along slash vlog slash tutorial on how to use the embroidery unit of the Pfaff Creative 3.0. I filmed all of this footage a year ago, so I'm going to do my best to show you exactly what I did and why. So this is a 3D Halloween quilt. It came out super awesome, but it definitely was a little bit hard to get the 3D element on film. So I'm going to do my best to show you how I made it. There are a couple clips that are a little bit redundant just to show you from a different perspective. Let's get started. Hello friends, I am currently working on quilting up my 3D Halloween quilt. And I have discovered a really cool trick to do embroidery on my sewing machine in a way that makes it look like the quilt has been long-armed. It's really cool, it's really nifty, and I can show you how to do it. So let me just start with something simple here. This is my little ghost border, and what I'm doing is just quilting all the way around this kind of haunted mansion looking fabric here that I have as the border. And I will show you on the machine how you can line up the border and keep it continuous and keep it even so that you can't even tell where one starts and one stops. All right, let me just share with you my vision for this quilt. My plan for this quilt is to make it 3D. And what do I mean by that? I have a few of the design motifs that I want to pop. And to make them pop, I have been stuffing them. So, for example, with the tree here, I went ahead and just quilted an outline of the basic tree. I actually went ahead and quilted outlines of all of the branches too, but that ended up not looking quite how I wanted it to, so I ended up quilting over them. But I went ahead and stuffed the tree only to realize that I had to take the stuffing back out because you cannot put a hoop over something that thick. So that being said, it does not show up on camera very well at all. I don't know if you can tell, but I have the haunted house here pretty well stuffed. And this is just regular polyester batting that I got from Joann's. May she rest in peace. So it is just regular pillow stuffing, and I am going to have to add a few more stitch lines in here because this is just looking like one big old blob, and that is not the effect that I was going for. I'm not sure if you can see the chimney. Can you see how 3D the chimney looks? That is the effect that I was going for, and the chimney looks really cool. So the issue I'm running into with this is that I am stuffing from in between the quilt top and the batting, coming under here and pushing the stuffing in. So once I get to the point where I have quilted over all around it, I'm not going to be able to access that part anymore because of the quilting. So I'm having to be very strategic about the order in which I am doing my quilting. So normally we would be quilting from the centermost part of the quilt and going outwards to prevent any ripples. I did my best with that for the sky. However, I did not do that as I have moved on to the bottom of the quilt. So let me show you a couple different things here. All right, so I have been purchasing these edge-to-edge quilting designs from the website Embroidery Library or emblibrary.com. And they frequently run really big sales of 60 to 70% off their designs. So you can purchase each of these designs for around $1 US dollar a piece, perhaps a little more. They do come in multiple sizes, so you will have to pick a size and purchase each size individually. However, I will show you some software that is free that allows you to very easily change the size of your design, so you don't necessarily need to purchase multiple sizes. I'll show you that later. All right, I'm just going to show you how to use this software. It's called Creativate, and I know I could have done a screen recording on my laptop, but I honestly rarely ever use my laptop anymore. It's mostly just for this purpose. So I am just going to show you as I record here on my phone. So I'm going to go to my edge-to-edge quilting designs. As you can see, I have quite a few, and we'll go with this filigree quilting just as an example. And it's going to pop up and tell me I'm not subscribed, which is fine. It just means that I won't be able to access a lot of the more premium features, but just for changing the size, it's not a big deal. So, all right, first thing to notice is that our selected hoop is obviously way too small for this design. You have two options. You can either switch to a larger hoop, in which case I would do this one, and I could rotate the design like that, and I have a very large design. Or you can change the size of your design itself. So you can, I'm trying to do this with one hand. Okay, so it's really easy to do. You're just moving the corners around like you would if you had an image in a Word document. And to the right of the screen, which is not shown here, it will actually show you the exact dimensions. Okay, so the other option would be if we change the hoop size back to the little one. Let's do 120 by 120. I think that's the one I have. And you can see the design is giant. And yeah, for some reason, I cannot do this with one hand. I don't know why. It's something to do with my laptop trackpad. But anyway, all you're really doing is just pulling down like I showed you in the last video, which I used both hands for. Last thing I'm going to mention, if you have any trouble with the file types not being compatible with your machine, just go over here to export, and that will allow you to choose from all of these different file types. For my Pfaff, I've been using the VP3, and that seems to work great. You also have this color sort option, which is not going to apply in our case. That is for when you have a design that is very, very color heavy and you're doing, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 colors. And it will just basically help you to reduce the number of color changes that you need to do. Okay, I think that is it. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments and I will get to them as soon as I can. Let's get sewing. So let me show you on my Pfaff Creative 3.0. I have the embroidery unit on, and I'm just going to take you through how I'm going to set up this little ghost design on the border here. Okay, so all I've done so far is turn my machine on. I do have the embroidery unit attached. You can maybe see it under there. And I have the hoop on. This is the 200 by 260 millimeter hoop. All right, so I have a nice blank screen to start with. I am in the embroidery mode. So I have my design attached with the USB. So I'm gonna go ahead and find it. Okay, so I have my USB device pretty well organized. I have quite a few embroidery designs that I have purchased from Embroidery Library. And I'm just gonna go through and find the specific one that I want. I'm going to switch over to the name because I have changed the size of a couple of my embroidery designs. And I just wanna make sure that I choose the right one. Okay, so it's the Tiny Ghost. All right, and there it is. Quite tiny. So what I'm going to do is position it over the hoop and show you how I can get it to be exactly where I want it. So the first thing that I'm going to do is figure out my starting point here. So I'm going to measure the width of my border here. So it's a little bit less than 2 inches. So that way I know that to line up in the center, it's going to be a little bit less than 1 inch. I'm not a perfectionist. I don't need to figure out exactly what that number is. I'm guessing it's about 1 7/8 inch. So half of 1 7/8 ish is probably about there, and that's fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and just stick a pin in that halfway point, which is about there. Okay, and then I'm gonna go ahead and measure where on my upper border. That is a little bit tougher to do with my camera. Okay, so that's gonna be you know what, let me measure it and I will come back to you. Okay, so I have gone ahead and marked right here. It's a little bit hard to see. That is the halfway point for both the upper and the side borders. And I just went ahead and used my handy dandy ultra washable Crayola marker. These are awesome. They're super cheap. They wash out really well for the most part, depending on the fabric. I haven't had them permanently stain anything. I have had it where I needed to actually wash the garment with soap to get the full color out, but it's actually perfect for this darker fabric. So now I am going to align my little ghosts here exactly where I want them to go. So on this screen, you are basically in the mode where you can edit the design itself, but you can't edit the position of the design on the fabric. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to come up here to this button and I can rotate the design 90 degrees. This is great because I can move it depending on which side of the border I'm on. So on my left side, I actually had it going in this direction. And now that I'm on the right side, I'm going to have it in that orientation. So when you are satisfied with how you have your design laid out on the screen, remember the box is representing your hoop. So when I realized this, it helped me so much. I was able to figure out everything so much more clearly and faster. So what you can do is kind of just do this as well with your stylus. And we'll bring it back. Oh, not quite to 0. There we go. So that's up to you. And when you are satisfied with how you have your design, we can move along. So we're going to move to our hoop mode. And again, you can go here, double check, make sure that you have the right size hoop selected. I think this is the one that is selected by default. Could just be default on mine because it's the last size that I used. I'm going to click on that and move into my hoop mode. Okay. All right, so now we are in the mode where we can position the machine and the hoop to basically have the design start and finish exactly precisely where we want it. Very, very precisely. All right, so this little, I'm not quite sure what this is called, the little pointer, that is going to tell you where the sewing will start or where the stitching is going to start. So we can come up here. Okay, now I am in the mode where I can move the design within the hoop. So remember, this box here is representing our hoop. So right now the design is perfectly centered. As you can see over here, I've got my center little line here and in the back, and that is showing me exactly where the center of my hoop is, where the center of the design is. And obviously, I don't want to start quilting here. I want to be quilting on this border. So I need to move everything over. So what I'm going to do, you have 2 different options here. Selecting this will select the little green pointer, and that is going to be able to move where you want a specific point to be. So for me, I want the pointer to be specifically at the start. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on the screen here. And you can zoom way in so you can see at the stitch level where it's going to start. I'm going to move my little pointer. Okay, so I know that I want this starting point to be exactly where I marked the dot on my fabric. So what I'm going to do is go back here to this screen, and I'm going to move the whole thing. Okay, and since we are so zoomed in, it's going to move a little more precisely. Okay, so remember that as you move it on the screen, in this particular mode, it's going to move the hoop to correspond with what you're doing on the screen, okay? You might have to zoom out and move to this screen to kind of move it over a little bit. Switch back to doing that. And keep on moving until I get pretty close. Okay, so I have identified a minor problem here. This particular design fills the whole hoop in length, and I designed it that way to be a little bit more efficient, but it is very important when you have a design that is going right up to the edge. I believe there's about a 5/8 inch buffer from where the edge of your hoop is to where the stitching will start. And just as a safety, you cannot stitch in between that area. So when you are putting your fabric in the hoop, you need to measure exactly where your start point is going to be in relation to where the hoop is. So for me, I have messed that up a little bit here. And basically all that means is that I need to remove the hoop and reposition it a little bit further up, because my design here, as you can see, the up arrow is grayed out. So I cannot move my design, the position of it, up anymore. I can't move it back anymore. And my little spot is right there. I don't know how well you can see it. There you go. About maybe half an inch off. So what I need to do is remove my hoop and move it about half an inch up, because like I said, I cannot move the design itself. I can't move the hoop anymore. It's up as far as it's going to go. So let me go ahead and do that. Now that I have my exact starting position, I'm going to go back up here and hit the little checkbox, which means everything is confirmed and we're good to go. Remember, it is going to move you back to the design's starting position, which is, for some reason, right here. So if you want to move through the stitches and start elsewhere, this is your button to do it. This is also a great button if you are doing, or sorry, a great way to kind of move through the design if you are really close to another design and you want to make sure that they don't overlap, or you're only doing partial design. This button is going to move through. Okay, it's going to show you exactly where the stitching is going to occur. Okay. It's also going to show you the number of stitches here. So I'm going to go back, and the longer that you hold it down, the faster it's going to go through the stitches. Okay. All right. So we're back to our starting position, and we can hit our start button and go, or you can use your foot pedal. I'm going to use my foot pedal. Go a little bit more slowly. You can control the speed with your foot pedal. I also like to stop and cut my thread so it doesn't end up getting caught up in the design. Okay. let me show you how fast it goes if I use the start-stop button. My foot is off the pedal right now. Also showing me on the screen where we're at. If I want to zoom out, I can do that. To get back to my screen, I just tap this button again. Takes me back here. This is your tension control. Alright, so we have completed our first pass here, my little silvery ghosts, and the machine has stopped and asked me to change the thread color. So I've gone ahead and changed it out to the blue. It's the same blue that I have in the sky here. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Also, I know my bobbin thread is low, but I don't need a lot of thread for this, so I am going to go ahead and get started anyway. If I hit the check mark and I start sewing, it's going to give me the same pop-up and it's going to stop. So I am going to just go ahead and get started and leave that pop-up on the screen. So unfortunately, because of this pop-up, I am not able to see, but that's okay. I know it's just going to be little eyes. Okay, so my embroidery is finished and I have moved it to the park position. So let me go ahead and take it off and I will show you. I did have a little bit of tension here, so I just clipped these threads connecting these two little ghosts. I am going to have to remove these anyway. All right, so I've gone ahead and clipped the blue threads that were connecting the eyes. Something I want to point out that I think is really important, and you can see where the eyes are a little bit off and then they're a little bit better on some of the other ones. Okay, my theory for that is that this is a very heavy quilt, and as the embroidery arm is moving around, it's getting pulled a little bit. So I would suggest as you embroider, make sure that the weight of your quilt is well supported so that it's not pulling on your design in any way. It's not really a big deal to me because, I mean, no one's really going to notice that, but I think it's important just also to not strain your machine. So just something to keep in mind. All right, I'm going to continue on. All right, a couple things to keep in mind when you are selecting the region that is going to be inside of your hoop. You've got the little marks here showing the center, and it's very important that you are cognizant of how far over the design can actually go from the edge here. So there's a little zone of about, I want to say like an inch, inch and a half, where the machine is not going to sew for safety reasons. I think it's mostly to make sure that it doesn't accidentally hit the plastic of the hoop. So you can see that here. I'll show you what it looks like. If I move the design all the way up, that's not going to work because I'm going beyond the frame, okay? So once I get to this screen, I have my design selected and I can choose to go ahead and rotate it if I want to. This button will allow me to rotate 90 degrees. This is great when you are embroidering on different sides. So for example, I might want to change this depending on if I'm working on the top or the bottom of the border or the left or right of the border. So I'm actually going to switch it back to 0 because that's how I am going to be working today. So once that's ready to go, I'm just going to go ahead and hit this button here, and that's going to put me into the mode where I am working with my hoop and I'm not making any more changes to the design here. Okay. It's going to go ahead and ask me to put in this specific thread color. You can use whatever thread color you want, not really a big deal. It's not going to know if you choose a different color. So here's the design laid out on the screen within my hoop, and the machine is automatically going to end up going right in the center of where the design would be. So our goal is to move the design in the hoop to exactly precisely where we want it to be. So we're going to go ahead and go here. And this is going to put us into the mode where we can change where the little pointer is. That's the start position where we're going to start sewing. So the green pointer is just choosing a position that you want to line up to a certain spot on your fabric. Okay, so we can go here and zoom in a little more so we can see, and you can zoom in down to the stitch level. You can zoom in, I believe it's 1700%, 1800%. Okay, so then we're going to take our stylus and we're going to go back here to the butterfly, which is going to allow us to move the little pointer. And we're going to position it right there, right at the start. It's a little tricky to get it exactly where you want it, but pretty close. All right, now that we have our little pointer in the spot that we want, we can go ahead and move the hoop and align our starting position with our little pointer here. So to do that, we're going to switch over here, and that's going to put us into the mode where we can move the design on the screen to have it match where we want it to start sewing on our quilt. All right, so to do that, let me go ahead and zoom in again. Okay, so now we are at the very start of the design, and I just want to clarify, this is not where the machine is necessarily going to start sewing, but this is giving you a specific point to line up the positioning of the design on your quilt. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So I am going to use that start position because I am joining it to where the previous little row of ghosts ended. So I want to get the needle right here because I want that design to continue right here, like completely unbroken, so that you can't even tell that I had to break it up into multiple parts of the design. It's just going to flow together and look like one long border. All right, so now I can get out of my zoom mode. I'm going to go back to the butterfly, and I'm going to move. I can move ever so gently. You can see it's very precise. And let me just show you what that looks like. It is almost imperceptible. It's so precise. And the longer you hold it down, the faster it will move over. Okay. If you want to move it over by a significant amount, you're going to have to zoom out a little bit. Then we can go back to our butterfly and we can move the full design, and it will move the hoop to mirror the design. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and test that out with my needle. All right, a little bit of troubleshooting here. This is as far back as the machine will allow me to go. So as you can see, there's some space between my needle and where the last design ended. So I need those to be matching up. And let me show you what that looks like on the screen. Basically, I am all the way as far back as the machine will allow me to go. You can see that by the grayed out upper arrow here. So I cannot move the hoop back anymore to pull the design closer to my needle, which means that I'm going to have to take it back down to the floor and move the embroidery hoop up in that direction about 3/4 of an inch. All right, I have repositioned my quilt within the hoop, so I'm going to go ahead and move just a tiny bit here. And again, let me show you what that looks like on the screen. I am just moving a tiny bit here until I can get it lined up. And then I'm putting the needle down so I can see exactly where it's hitting, because I do want to be precise. And I like to overlap by about half a stitch. Okay, and this can be a little bit of a process, but I just want to be careful with it. Okay, I think that's good. I'm happy with that. All right, so now that I have the positioning all set, I am going to go ahead and zoom back out, and I'm going to hit my check mark, which lets me know, or lets the machine know, that we are ready to start sewing. And this is going to be the starting point. I believe that is based on the designer, whoever came up with this design. I could technically start sewing elsewhere by moving this arrow here. This arrow here is the path of your stitching. So right now we're at the start, stitch number 1. You can keep going, and you can see on the screen and also here, it's going to move around your design in case you want to start sewing somewhere else. You can also go backwards, which is great if something happens and let's say you have a tension issue and your thread breaks, and the machine will still keep sewing for a few stitches before it recognizes that the thread has broke. So you need to be able to back up to the spot where your last stitch was. This is how you do it. Or perhaps you want to only sew a portion of your design, not the whole thing. You can use these buttons here to move your pointer to the location of the design that you want to sew and skip over everything else. This is also how I was sewing the 3D pumpkins here, how I kind of sewed around them. So I had this larger pumpkin motif in my embroidery hoop here, and I did get to the point where there were a few spots on the design. I did not want to overlap on my big puffy pumpkin here, so I just stopped sewing and kind of skipped. I think I got pretty close here, but there were some spots on the larger pumpkin, and all you have to do is just kind of fast forward through the stitches and it will skip them for you. So let's go back here. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and start stitching. I'm just going to hit the start button and voila. Okay, one more note. I do prefer to cut the starting tail off before the design gets too far, because I don't want it to get all stuck in my design and be difficult to remove at the end. Okay, and all I did there was press the stop button. Now I'm going to hit start again, and it will just go back to where it was. You can see that it's going back there perfectly, making that up with the previous design. Got a nice flow. And because the weight of my quilt is quite heavy, I do like to kind of support it a little bit so that I don't have too much tension on my machine. Alright, so I have gone ahead and completed the little string of ghosts here, and they just need their blue eyes. So I have changed out my thread to the blue, and I'm ready to move on to the next step of adding in their little blue eyes. Okay, so once it's done, it's going to give you a little pop-up on here, and it's going to bring the embroidery hoop forward. And I went ahead and just clipped the little piece of thread that was connecting the eyes. So I now have my cute little ghosts, and I need to go ahead and remove my hoop and check underneath, because the same little thread that was connecting the upper thread between the two eyes is also doing the same with the bobbin thread underneath. So those all need to be clipped and cleaned up. And I just noticed that, yes, don't worry, I'm aware, some of my free motion quilting is coming a little bit undone there, so I will go ahead and fix that too. But that is the main idea when you are connecting the same type of design over and over again as far as lining it up. And you'll see that it's not perfect, it's a little bit off in some spots, but that's okay. I think it's cute. I think it adds to kind of the handmade look of the quilt. Okay, yeah, there's still quite a bit of work to do. Then I need to finish stuffing the portraits, and I need to figure out kind of like exactly how I'm going to quilt the skeleton dudes here. I already know what I'm going to do along here. I'm going to do like a little, I have a little design that looks like a little fence with some ghosts on top of it. But yeah, the problem that I've been having is thread breaking. So my machine does really great embroidery when it is just one layer like this, but when it starts to get to the point where, I don't know if you can see it on here, but this pattern has actually, like the stitching is doubled. Like the machine goes over it once and then it goes backwards over it again to reinforce it and make it pop a little bit more. And that's when my machine starts having problems. So that's what's taking so long. The main thing that's left to do is to finish stuffing the tree trunk here, and this pumpkin is mostly stuffed, but it needs to be kind of evened out. And then I am going to finish quilting the little ghost border here, which is done on the rest of the quilt, and finish quilting up the monsters, which I have a pumpkin motif that I've been using. And then over here, so basically when I'm stuffing, I have to like come all the way through the quilt sandwich here to be able to access the pumpkin. Yeah, let me see what else. So I did decide to go ahead with my original plan of stuffing the portraits individually. So these are all sewn up and ready to be stuffed. But the problem with the stuffing is that once something is stuffed, I can't put the embroidery hoop on it, and all of this, except for the little bit of free motion quilting that I've been doing, requires the embroidery hoop. And it is not going to hold, like, it doesn't hold the fabric taut when it has to go over the puffiness here, like the stuffed portion. So that's been a little bit difficult logistically. I've had to plan the entire thing around the puffiness because the hoop can't handle it. Yeah, and I think that's it for right now. It's definitely taking longer than I thought, but that's okay. Look at how cute Moose is. let me just show you the difference between what my sewing machine is doing as far as the design goes and why I'm doing it this way compared to the way that I've done it in the past, which is just a really basic meander slash stippling design that I do with my hands. Okay, you can see it more down here, especially with the pumpkin design. Like you can see how nice and neat and distinct the design is with the pumpkins. I cannot do that with my hands. Okay, same with this design, although this one's a little bit more, I guess, abstract. Versus, okay, this is what I did with my hands. This is all I can do when it comes to free motion quilting. And all you're doing is just holding the quilt and pushing it like around underneath the sewing machine needle. So this is the extent of my skills as far as that goes. So here is how I've been doing the stuffing. I am going directly under the quilt top. You could also technically, I mean, there's a couple ways to do this. You could go underneath the batting if you wanted to. I have also seen people even cut holes directly in the back of the area that they're going to be stuffing. I don't want to do that. That means I'm going to have to do some hand sewing, and I try to avoid hand sewing as much as possible. So I am going through here. I use spray batting, so I have everything kept together with the spray, and I'm trying to use as small of a spot as possible because everything is so nicely sprayed and stuck together. So let me go ahead and stuff up into the tree trunk here. So because of the narrow shape of the tree trunk, I was not able to fully stuff it as much as I wanted to from the top. So kind of having to do this in separate sections here. All right, so the way that I'm doing this, I am going underneath just my quilt top, going up into the tree, and I don't want it so stuffed that it's making the design look distorted. I think that is something that I've really noticed with this process. It's also a lot more difficult than I expected it to be. I don't know why I thought that this was going to be something fairly quick and easy. I mean, I think it's worth it because it's really, really cool looking in person. Like the effect is really cool. That being said, it depends on how much time you have and how much you want to put into it. I think that looks good for the tree trunk. I don't really want it too much more stuffed than that. The pumpkin is another story. So the pumpkin is quite stuffed, honestly. I think it's a little too stuffed. Okay, so I had already quilted around the outline of the design, and I think this portion is a little bit confusing because the colors are so similar. So you have the background of the tree trunk here, and you have this mound, which I guess is just like a gourd maybe with candles on it. Whatever. I guess I technically could have quilted around here, but trying to stuff into this little tiny like narrow portion would be really difficult. So I did want to have clear segregation between the what is this called? Like the stem, I guess, of the pumpkin. And this portion over here, which is still part of the tree trunk. And I already sewed over this and then realized that I can't really get in here, and I do want this part to be like a little bit stuffed. I don't want it completely flat. So I am going to go ahead and remove a few of these stitches so that I'm able to put a little bit of stuffing in here. All right, so I am going back over my outline just to make sure everything is nice and secure, and I really like the effect that that is giving. To me, it's looking like we've got a lot more separation to where you can see the individual design motifs. Let me just show you what I did here. Since I started making this before I started filming, what I did originally, I took 2 layers of batting and put them on the back of the quilt top and just sewed around the motifs that I was planning to turn into 3D elements. So essentially, you can see it a little bit better under here. I have these 2 extra layers of batting right here, and those are separate from my main layer of batting for the entire quilt. So I had sewn these on, and then I actually cut around the back, kind of like a reverse applique. And the reason I did that is to make the design pop a little bit more, give it a little bit more dimension with those 2 layers of batting. But ultimately I decided that there wasn't enough pop for me, so that's why I went ahead and added the stuffing. But there are certain elements, and perhaps if you don't want quite the pop of the stuffing, I think you could get away with just doing the extra batting in the back. But it actually worked out well because it ended up being this extra little pocket. So I have put some stuffing in between the quilt top and those 2 layers of batting that I had sewn onto it. I'm so close to being done with this quilt. I started working on the border. It's super cute, or kind of creepy, however you want to look at it. And then on the other side of the border, the ghosts have blue eyes. So I'm going to do different colored eyes for the top and the bottom. So pretty much everything is done. I do have this idea to make the skeletons a little bit 3D. So I have stuffing in all of the portraits, so they are all 3D. They're all sewn up, they're done. And so what I'm doing is adding, I think you can actually see it pretty well on here. I'm adding 3 layers, like little squares of batting into each skeleton, and I'm just sewing around it to make it pop. And then the last thing I need to do is put the ghosts all around it and then add the binding. So getting close. For those of you wondering if I'm ever going to finish this quilt, you know what? I'm wondering the same thing. Something I noticed that I hadn't considered is because I have the stuffing in certain spots, it's making the quilt a little bit wonky. And I'm sure my more experienced quilting friends were probably like, I don't know how this is gonna go for you. It will just be my own personal learning experience. But yeah, this line that's supposed to be straight is not straight. And you know, I might leave it like that. I don't know. I kind of like the idea of it being a little bit more wonky because it's so, you know, unique and creepy anyway. So maybe if we make it a little wonky, it'll just add to the whimsy of it all. That's what I'm going to tell myself. So here are some pictures of the finished result. The quilt came out awesome. It was so much work, but I really love it. In person, it has kind of a fisheye effect to it, and everything really pops. It's very, very difficult to get it on camera. I did take a video of the finished quilt, but you really can't see exactly how the 3D effect looks. So I did take some from different angles so you guys can see here. But I hope that this tutorial was helpful for you, and I hope you guys give this a try on your next quilt. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!